Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Noxcast, your Equinox News Recap Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Hope. I'm the managing executive editor of the Equinox.
And I'm Chloe Erno, the news editor. Today we're joined by Xander, our photo editor.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So, Xander, you've been with us for a little bit now, and you started off sort of in the area of like news, staff writing, but then you've kind of really stepped up in the photo realm and taken a lot of different photos, like difficult event ones, profile ones, like just general like building shots, things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of your like journey thus far with like the Equinox, getting involved with that?
So I originally started as like a staff writer, and then I was just writing articles like every week, and then I was trying to pick up 2 a week, and then eventually it came into the fall semester, and obviously the fall semester is a little bit busy because I play rugby, so obviously athletics take up a huge portion of my time. But Dr. Lawfer was talking with me. She was like, we've had a photo editing position open for quite a while now, and she was talking about some of my work in other classes, and she thought that I would be best fit for photo editor. She thought that it would be a good opportunity for me to get on the staff and take a look at things, which was, for me personally too, it was just a bit odd because like I'm not too invested in photos. I have a decent background in them. I know how to work well with computer softwares or and such and cameras, and I'm very technical in that way. But besides that, I didn't really have a lot of experience, so I decided to take that step up to get on the e-board and see what it was like to work in a newsroom, and I've been working ever since.
What has it been like from your perspective? Like, what kind of keeps you going week by week, and what sort of like areas interest you in particular? I know you haven't really stopped writing either. You've written consistently, still pretty consistently since taking on the photo editor role. If you want to just talk a little bit about sort of where your interests sort of lie in.
Um, well, for photos, I've been just kind of picking up what if there's a photo assignment I see and I'm interested in, I'll pick it up. Specifically, it's been mostly sports that I pick up. I really like fast action photography because I just think could be some of your most genuine journalism photos that you can get, and obviously it could be your best quality ones too. Like for instance, the photos I took of Madison County. The photos came out great where they were clinking the glass, and I loved it. And that's actually where I started like actually enjoying taking photos for the Equinox. And just for writing wise, I've just sort of started to pick assignments that have started to sound more interesting to me and a little bit more in depth. I kind of like the longer stories, the longer deadline, because I can really dive in, do my research, and make sure I have all the facts right.
Right. Yeah. And what would you say to someone who might potentially be interested in joining the Equinox, whether it be for writing or photography? What kind of advice would you give them to really take that step, join the staff?
Well, I'll start with photography. Don't be scared to join. We have cameras, we have equipment that we can give and lend you out, so you don't have to bring your own equipment, and you can actually just start with ours, and you can work with that. And we have pretty decent equipment to work with to start with, especially for a school newspaper. It's really easy to work with too, and we're always looking to help you, no matter which step you're on, whether even just be for photos or for writing an article. We're always going to be there to help you. We're going to make sure that you get to your deadline at the end of the day, one day or another. You're not on your own.
Awesome. Well, it's been great to have you on so far, and looking forward to all the amazing work that we're going to continue to do right up until the year end. So, on that note, we do have to get into our regular news recap here. We got a lot of stuff for you, so stay tuned here. But top story in news this week was coverage from our staffer Sam Menard about the student assembly budget meeting. So this is the big meeting that Assembly holds each year where they release the budget recommendation numbers. So each club on campus requests a certain amount of money to pay for the various things in order to keep up operations. And then the student assembly, particularly the budget committee and the treasurer's job, is to make sure that the funding requests stay in line with the amount of money that they're expecting in student fees. Specifically for student activity fees. And so this meeting is always really well attended. I know, from my experience on assembly that pretty much every other meeting that we have, barely anyone ever shows up. And when it comes to this meeting, everyone really does show up and really pays attention to these things. And this particular budget meeting wasn't as, fiery and intense as last year, which we did cover extensively at that time. but there was still a lot of questions going around, a lot of people who were concerned about certain cuts made. But I think this was really good in-depth coverage when it comes to the budget meeting. It didn't really last too long, but again, it's just such an important topic that affects so much of campus life. And I know, Xander, you took photos at this, and I know it's, meetings aren't typically the most, I guess, interesting in terms of getting those strong visuals, but when you have people that are there and sort of like emotions feel like they're running a little bit high, it kind of can lend itself well. So, Chloe, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about this too.
Yeah, I agree that Sam did a really great job covering it. And it was also very surprising to read through, especially in regards to some of the cuts to certain organizations. I remember the Black Student Union and SAC both got pretty tremendous cuts to their budgets, and that was just a shock for me to see. I didn't think they would cut it down that much, that drastically, so I was not expecting that at all when I read through it.
Yeah, I mean, I was there at the meeting too, and I was actually just shocked overall with a lot of the budget cuts that we've had, and I don't know, I was glad that there was little bit more transparency on the issues, but I do feel like it's a step in the right direction, but we do need to take another step. But I think overall it was a good article.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's just another case where it's, something that people should definitely pay attention to, and I'm glad to be able to provide that information to people that weren't able to make it that night, because it is a really important topic, in my opinion. But moving on to our region state top story, this comes to us from Sophia Schlittman at the New Hampshire UNH's student publication. And this is about the campus carry bill that we've sort of touched on a little bit. But it's a bill that's been going through the state legislature regarding possession of guns on campus, basically allowing people to possess guns, whether it be like students, faculty members, what have you. And so this article is specifically about the UNH president expressing opposition to the bill, basically mainly due to like security concerns of more people having guns and that potentially on campus, and that potentially leading to needing higher security, needing to invest more in campus safety and like measures like that. So this piece was really just talking about that. But I will say, in addition to UNH President Chilton's stance, that there has been opposition also from President Burks and also other university system leaders, mainly again due to the security and financial concerns.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, we have covered this before, especially with the town hall meeting with Jody Noel, where she talked about it. And even like as a college student, the very idea of it just makes me very uncomfortable. I don't like the idea of people around me carrying loaded weaponry, especially if they don't have it registered, if they don't have a license to carry. That makes me especially uncomfortable. And I can't imagine how parents must feel who have their children here at our child care facility, because they can take these weapons anywhere, into any building, and I feel like that's just overall very unsafe.
Now I can speak to this because I am a college student, but in my opinion, I just don't think college students have the full level of maturity that a normal adult does. Even though they go to school, they have to take care of themselves, they have to keep track of themselves. They don't have an understanding of the real world yet. They're still part of a structured living. You're going to your classes every day. You have your meal plan. You go have your lunch. You're still part of a structured classes, and I just think part of that just doesn't give them an understand. Like, it's not even just guns in general, but there's an overall understanding of responsibility that I just don't think college students can fully understand. And even to just bring it up to that level, to give them a firearm and let them walk with it on campus, I don't know. I think that's a whole new level of responsibility that would have to be discussed.
Yeah, I definitely would side with Chilton and some of the other university administrators on this, because, I think outside of just not really making much sense in terms of like needing to invest more in areas when we're downsizing so much, I think, when you introduce any situation where you really are at like a public space and you introduce weapons into that space, even if it's for, maybe a good intention or trying to, have it just in case of a self-defense scenario, I think it, even if well-intentioned, it can lead to a lot of bad things that could potentially happen. when emotions might run high or an altercation might happen, and then something gets pulled, and that's a really big issue, obviously. So I think I kind of agree with some of the concerns expressed on that, and I think the goal of any college should be to make it as safe of an environment as possible, so people aren't having to be concerned about those things. So that's definitely my take on that. But I thought it was a nice little piece from our sort of one of our partner publications, almost, if you will, over at UNH. So good reporting from them. But moving on now to our Student Life top story from Student Life editor Justin. So this is coverage of the Academic Excellence Celebration. So they hold this, I believe, once every semester at the very end of the semester, where people in certain classes sort of work toward building up like a poster presentation project most of the time. I think the projects can sometimes take other forms, but posters are definitely the most popular one. And they're really presenting like research that they did, and sort of different things that they learned in class, and sort of being able to almost fulfill like a teacher role themselves when they're like talking to attendees. And I think it's just a really cool opportunity to put what students learn into practice, and sort of really demonstrate the fact that they've learned these things. And also, I know that you took photos at this, Xander. It's a nice little one where you can kind of get pictures of like people looking at things and like engaged in that. So I think it was really good coverage.
Yeah, and we've spoken to this before, but any event that gives students the opportunity to show off their skills and their research over the course of the semester is always a great thing. I didn't get to see it this year, but I did get to see it last year, and it's always so fun to walk through and see all the posters. And I feel like everyone there is always so excited to just show you what they've learned, and it's just a really nice event. It's very touching to see everything that they've done over the course of the semester.
Yeah, I think I'm going to share the same sentiment. It's always good to see students when they're talking about something that they're passionate about, even if it's something that you yourself might not find interesting. It's always fun to learn it from someone who's just as passionate about that. And it's always great to see students come together in a collective group and present their works that they spend so much time here at Keene State College producing. And just to touch upon like photos, it's such a great opportunity to get photos as well. When you have everyone lined up, you have people doing things, people talking, people presenting, and you can get some real good genuine reactions from that.
Definitely. And I think, shout out to everyone who, worked so hard on all these different projects, and, really built up that courage to be able to present to a variety of different people. I know it's definitely not the easiest thing in the world. I had my own poster presentation last semester, and it's a lot of hard work. So shout out to everyone involved in that, and the organizers as well, for another successful event. But let's move on now to our editorial, which this week was about some news revolving around UNH using the AI software Tassel, which is an AI company that's specifically designed to pronounce names for purposes of commencement, and I guess maybe other celebrations which might call for that, but usually graduations and commencement. And this was a really, I think, in-depth and sort of insightful discussion. There wasn't, a very extremely unifying, message. I think there was some disagreement among the board, and I think that's always good to see, because there's a lot of nuance to the issue. It's not just a black and white thing. But I think ultimately what we did agree on was sort of, we can kind of understand maybe why a larger institution like UNH would use a software like this, and sort of removing like the logistical barriers of having all the different speakers and then all the perhaps mispronunciations, and having that, be like a harmful thing, and we can understand that rationale. But I think a lot of us kind of thought it wouldn't make sense to bring something like that to Keene State. And I think there's also questions that were raised about, conflicting with sustainability missions, and also just, losing that human touch to graduation. So while we did have, some dissenting and various different opinions on this, I think ultimately sort of erring on the side of, we wouldn't really want something like this at Keene State.
I will agree. I think it's very interesting that we didn't have necessarily a unified answer. This was the first time in a while where we had like a full-on discussion with some disagreements amongst the staff, and everyone was very polite with sharing how they felt about it. And I think I erred a bit more on the side of, while I can understand why UNH would do it, I can also understand why some students might not want that. It takes away the human aspect of graduation. And there's also the added fact of just AI in general not being very good for the environment or for our world. So it's definitely a complicated issue, to say the least.
Yeah, the issue is very complicated because there's so many different sides here. But at the end of the day, as me being a Keene State student, is I would not want that at my graduation. I would not want my name to be read by an AI voice just because we are a smaller college, and I feel like that is a perk of going to a smaller college is having your name read at graduation, is knowing the person who's handing you your diploma, shaking their hand, and then being able to walk away being all happy with yourself.
Yeah, I think it's ultimately what we talked about is like the difference in expectations, and maybe if you're going to bigger school, it wouldn't really be super reasonable to expect that you have that closer personal touch. But at a school like Keene State, that's definitely something that people do expect. So I think that's what we touched on too. But it was a really good in-depth discussion. So I encourage people to sort of read our different points in the full article online. With that being said, though, we can move on to some more positive news, some more event coverage over in A&E. We got this piece about the Evening of Dance, which is an annual event that the theater and dance department sort of puts on. It's really a huge occasion. It's something they've been doing for, I think, at least a few decades now, where they sort of get the chance to put on these very intricate, involved productions. And this one, I think, included a real life taxidermied fish, as I've read in the article, and it seems like the reaction from like the audience was referring to it as creative and like a magical experience. And I know a couple of people on the e-board just went recreationally as well, and they had a good time. So I'm always happy to see things like this. And another example of being able to sort of put into like practice what people learn, because I believe Evening of Dance, this does come from the work that like classes in the area do, or people who learn things from classes and then they apply it with things like this. So I think it was really good coverage, and I think speaking about it from the visual side of things, when we have these big events and especially performances and stuff, that's where you get some of the best photos of just the year, and you can also do really cool things with like the page layouts. So we had a really cool time with this this week.
Yeah, and I got to look through the photos, so I was looking for a header for the news section, and they were all so colorful and they came out beautifully. Um, I love the note of the taxidermied fish. I don't know why. That just gets a giggle out of me. And I know that we were talking about the logistics of taxidermied fish, but I'm glad to see the event back in action. And as you were saying, every time it pops up, we have to put it on the layout somewhere and incorporate it in a unique way. So that's always fun.
Yeah, just going back to the photos, I absolutely love our photos in the arts, and I classify like dance is easily a sports photo. You have so much movement going on that you can capture just raw authenticity in a photo, and I just love them, especially with like you mentioned, like the colors are always just so great, and they always come out great.
Definitely. And so props to Michael for doing that coverage, and then our opinions editor Maddie for taking on the photo assignment. It's not the easiest thing in the world. Sometimes it can be difficult with these more involved things, but I think the payoff is just so huge that it really is worth taking that chance. So if you're thinking or potentially interested or want to join on, these are some of the opportunities that can be offered to you. With some experience and gaining some stuff in the field. But that being said, we're going to round it out with our sports top stories. This is from Administrative Executive Editor Jacob, and this was about 4 OWL athletes who won Little East Conference Honors of the Week for just their various positive performances in their respective sports. So we have a couple from track and field. We have Elle McDonald. We have Molly Lou McKellar. And then we have for the baseball team, senior pitcher David Floyd, and finally on the men's lacrosse team, junior Ty Kugler, who got various different honors just for how well they performed in each of their games. So when it comes to Kugler, he got Defensive Player of the Week because he collected 16 ground balls, caused 10 turnovers throughout the week, and has been named to the award several times already. So that was cool to see. And then we have, some other insights. When it comes to Floyd, the coach said that he possesses potentially the best fastball, breaking ball combination in our league. So a lot of really positive comments from coaches and also athletes who were awarded alike. So it's always nice to just be able to highlight that and further talk about how well some of our sports teams do on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and to reiterate what we've said in the past, it's always great to be able to praise individual students for what they've done. And I always like having both the athletes and the coach's opinion. I think that that's always a good contrast, and just to see what each of them have to say. I think getting the athletes themselves is always so great to hear what they have to say about what they've done, their work so far. And I love being able to just draw attention to what they're doing.
Yeah, and even just from like a reader's perspective, like as a student who reads the Equinox, I love being able to see my peers doing great things in sports. It makes me feel good about our school, and it just makes me feel good about my peers too. And I don't know. I feel like we belong to a good school who has a good sports program.
Definitely. So, a really pretty action-packed recap there for you, but appreciate you guys listening as always. And I would like to end it off as always by extending a special shout out to the composer of the music for Noxcast, our very own Equinox alum Zach Keenan, to the creator of the graphic for Noxcast, very own art director Elijah Fisher, and to the editor of Noxcast, very own multimedia director Noelle Hisgen. Until next time, thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with another news recap.